Okay, we are live. Hello, future Debbie. How are you? So I mentioned last week in class for activity 5, I added this little note that says we don't have enough people to do the finger snapping thing, so there's a US president's lifespan spreadsheet here. Cool thing about this spreadsheet, when I open it up, some of you may have noticed, and I mentioned it, that it jumps from column B to column K. That ain't so alphabetical. So I hid some columns in there. And if you unhide the hidden columns, you'll see that it has their birth date. It also has their inauguration date. With that, they give us the age at inauguration. Downside to that is they give us it in a column that has way too much information in it. And so I'm going to show how to separate that information. I'm going to actually show it in Excel this time instead of Sheets. There is a plugin you can download for Sheets to ask it to split the data on the comma or the space. I guess maybe I'll show it both ways. So I'm going to go, earlier I went to File, Download As, and I said, give me this as an Excel sheet. So that's this file here. I opened up those columns, and I made a copy of the column that I want to split apart here. And so usually when I'm splitting a column in Excel, it will take any extra data, like if I wanted the word years in a different column and the number 236 and days in a different column, it will put it into the next available column, which means you could accidentally overwrite columns of data, which is a problem. And so what I usually do is make a copy and put it in a new sheet, and then I work with that. So in Excel, once you have some data that you want to split up, you need to make sure you have some empty cells next to you for that split data to jump into. Otherwise, it can annihilate data on the screen, which is a problem. So, well, that's one reason I usually put it in a new place, because I've accidentally damaged data and not noticed. And it's like, oh shit. So you can insert columns or put it in a new place where there's extra space to the right.
You got a lot of data here again.
Yeah, there's a lot of data there, yeah. So that's the other thing. Is it going to get too messy in a sheet if you keep inserting columns and getting kind of hard to read? So yeah.
If you don't have spaces, kind of like unitary bracket with plus window, just like
no, it doesn't really push things along. It just wipes things out.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem. So then what you do is you highlight any data you want to adjust. And so I'm going to highlight or split, excuse me. So I highlight the data I want to split. And then I go to the Data tab in Excel. And under the Data tab, there's a ton of options. The two things I use most frequently in the Data tab are Sort, which is the little button in the middle, and then Text to Columns. What that'll do is it'll give you ways to take text in a cell and split it into new columns. So it's the Text to Columns option that I'm going to show you here.
How do you unhide a column?
It's hard on a phone. I'm not sure.
There should just be a little button at the top.
Yeah, there's a little arrow. If you hit those arrows at the top, it'll open it up. That's great. Yeah, so you got to hit that little arrow just right. So she's in Sheets. I'll show that one in a minute. So then there's a couple ways to do it. You can use fixed width, which means you put little markers, vertical markers that say, okay, stop here, stop there. Or you can do delimited. And a delimiter is a separator. Delimiter is just another word for separator. So I'm going to try doing it with separators. So it's saying our tabs are separators. So I'm going to uncheck that. My separators are commas and spaces. And so then what it'll do is it'll try to split the data based on that. And it works for some cells, but not others. Notice it's splitting the age at, but otherwise I have my 43 in one column, the word years in another, the 236 in another column, the days in another. Sometimes that doesn't work quite right. And so if that doesn't work, then sometimes I will go back and I'll try the fixed width. And with the fixed width, you just make little markers. Now, it guessed here for me. It guessed I wanted to put a mark after these 2-digit numbers and then after years comma. And I can move them around. So I can move that closer to the 236 numbers, and then I can put one at the end of that to split off the days, and I can move them as I do that. So sometimes fixed width with your markers works better, sometimes the delimiter one works better. Depends on the data, you just never know until you try. And then I'll hit finish and I'll see what happens. And I'll look at my data and say, hey, that did oh, look at it, 6 days, it didn't do that quite right. And it's hard to catch everything. So that wasn't too bad. If I undo that and try it again, I could try the other method. And so sometimes it takes me a couple of tries before I get it right. Is it possible you get some data that just this wizard can't handle? Absolutely. I've gotten data that this couldn't fix, and I had to go into some refinement. Just the way it goes. So in this case, I do have spaces and commas, and so clicking those two does a perfect job of splitting my data. Other thing about doing it with the delimiter, the next screen says, what do you want to do with this data? What kind of data is in this column? And I could say it's general, which means the computer will guess whether it's numbers or words. I could say it's words, I could say it's a date. Or I could say, like, do I need the word years over and over again? Not really, I could just put a heading at the top that says years. So I could say, let's not import that column, skip it. And then I know those are days, I don't need it to say days next to it every time. So I could say, let's skip that one too. So with the delimited option, you can choose to get rid of stuff there. Even with the other option, when it didn't give me that up front, later I could delete any column I want. So this will have a slightly different effect when I click finish. And there's also some advanced options if you want to play with those. And so then now I have a list of columns of the year they're at and plus extra days. So I can relabel these as year and days. So then you want to decide, do you want to incorporate the fact that this person was 43 years old in 236 days? Right? They were edging on 44. Whereas, you know, this person down here was just a few days over, 6 days over 51. If you decided you wanted to use that data, then you would have to combine it. So here I could write a formula to say their actual age could be something like equals the years plus, and then I can make the days a fraction out of 365. And so then I can get a decimal value for the years. So this person was 43.6-ish years old. I couldn't do that calculation based on the way the data was given to me, because it's all bundled up in one cell. So that was a problem there. So now I have a new set of data, and I can just fill that down. We've done filling down before. Here's another cute trick. Once I type a formula that I want to repeat, I can just go to the bottom right corner, and I can click and drag to fill it down. Another option in Excel and Sheet is if you double-click the autofill button, it will guess how far it's appropriate to fill it. So it'll look anywhere it finds similar cells to the left, it'll keep going. So again, to do that, Control Z. All I did was click on the cell and then double-click the autofill button instead of clicking drag. Same process. So now I have a decimal version of their age if I want, which you can clean up however you want. So maybe I'll just state it as year, 10th of year, to differentiate a little bit. So I have their age. Other things, if I were to try and copy this age data and paste it somewhere else, it's going to want to refer back to these cells because it's a calculated value. So if I go back here and I were to paste that in this age column, let's see if I can copy the top, copy the top too. So if I were going to paste that in here, it copied the relative formula, which means look here and here for those numbers. But what if those guys weren't there? Right? What if instead these columns weren't around?
Who's the first guy? 43-year-old.
Copy, paste. It freaks out because it's looking for the cells adjacent to do the calculation. So one way you can get around that is with the paste special options. So you can say just paste the values that were there, not the formula. So I can do that, and now I just have those numbers.
So what if you do that, though, your data will automatically update the sheets?
Yeah, if I realize that this person was, 290 days extra, yeah, so then I have to recalculate it. That is the downside of doing that. So it's always a balance. You got to decide what's the best way to do it. But keep in mind when you do paste, depending on the type of stuff you copy, you might get multiple paste options. So notice here, there's like a dozen different ways I can paste what I copied. Sometimes there's only one way to paste the data you copied. Sometimes there's two ways. Excel looks at the data and it says, these are the things I can do with it and paste it. Okay. So Greg, what was your question?
I was just double checking my data. Which guy?
I had JFK at the beginning of mine when I did that calculation.
Um,
So JFK was at the top of my list.
Because I split mine without using the plugin, without downloading the plugin at all. So
Oh, in Sheets?
yeah,
Oh, it has, because you didn't used to be able to split it.
so I just split it with the data. Split
Oh, okay. Text to columns,
And
okay.
then it brings up a box down below, and then you can choose between comma, semicolon, period.
So, yes, okay, so that's excellent.
Custom.
So here's one cool thing about Google Sheets, and it's also kind of, I don't know if it's frustrating, but they're constantly working on it and making it better. And you don't really notice it because it looks the same every day. But last year, split text to columns wasn't there. And so I used to have to use an add-on called Power Tools to allow me to split data. And Power Tools was a program somebody else wrote that Google approved to let people add it on Sheets to make it do stuff Sheets wasn't capable of doing on its own.
And Google goes, hey, that's pretty good.
That's
idea.
pretty cool, let's use it, yeah. And so then they incorporate something similar, and so yeah, now there's a split.
thing.
And
People write cool apps
they incorporate.
and then they
Yeah,
go, oh,
so-
that's a great
Yeah, so
idea.
that's cool. So I use, this is funny, I use Sheets every day, I sort data every week, and I hadn't yet noticed that new feature was there. So that's cool. We don't have to actually.
It was pretty easy too.
Yeah.
One thing I had feature was that space to write.
Yeah, so the Power Tools, one cool thing about Power Tools is it adds spaces for you. So I don't have to worry about it.
I don't.
Yeah, I guess I'll try it and see what happens. Kelly, what were you gonna say? Yes, this is all being recorded.
I want to use it on my computer.
Yeah, we could move into the lab so you guys can play. Let me do a couple things, then we'll move into the lab. So you can do this. So let me just, let's experiment, let's see what happens. So suppose I highlight column E and I go to data and I say, let's split some text.
I give you the option down on the right there.
Okay, so there's the comma. Can I do, it only gives me, let's see, what if I go to custom? Oh, custom, then I gotta blow it down because you guys can't see that. Yeah, so I zoom in and out on Google, which creates some problems with their interface when I do that. So I wasn't able to see that. Yeah, so I can only split on one thing at a time. And let's see, was it gonna
I
cover
already
everything
split
else?
it for you. You must have hit something.
And no, I just hit.
Look, see it split.
Yeah, I see it split there already, yeah.
And then I hit each column and split it again. I wanted to pull it.
Space, and it's automatically pushing stuff over for me, which is cool. Excel doesn't do that yet, so that's kind of nice. Yeah, so now I have the year in one column, the word years, which I could get rid of, the days in another column, word days in a fourth column.
Delete those two
Yeah.
columns.
So then I could just go In Excel, you can use Control minus to wipe out content. In Google, Control minus shrinks the screen and blows the screen up. So I would have to go to the Edit menu until the Delete column F. And wipe out any extra columns.
Or you can just right click on the column.
Yeah, or I could right click or click this arrow button here, and that gives me options to do the column. So then I could combine, like where it says days now, I could recalculate their age. So I could say years, days, age, and do that age calculation, right? It equals the years plus the number of days over 365. Put that down. It doesn't want to go the right words, so I have to drag it down. And then it's always up to you. What do you want to do with the data? What seems appropriate at the time? Do we even care how many days old they were? Because I call myself 46 every day until I'm 47. Sometimes I think it's funny to say I'm 46.5 or 46 and 7/12 or whatever. Okay, so let's see. Since I have it highlighted, I can reduce the number of decimals visible to something that is more attractive to my eyes. Clean up those columns. So, and actually I should give that a better title. That's the inauguration age. Narrow. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. I have an inauguration age. I also have a lifespan, so that the age they lived to. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if somebody was inaugurated later in life, does that mean they also live longer? Or maybe inaugurated somehow makes them die earlier from stress, right? Because it must be pretty tough being the president. So I could do a different kind of graph with this. So I could do like a scatter plot. So we can do that in a minute. Before I do a scatter plot, I just want to review the idea of a histogram. And we'll do a box plot, and then we'll do a scatter plot with this.
What about the ones that were assassinated?
Oh gosh, yes, that's a whole nother thing, assassination, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna grab this inauguration age out of here and add it to a new sheet and just demo how to do a frequency table.
That's
How did I do decimals?
also places I didn't see that.
Oh, I told it to, if I double click there, I told it to take the years and add it to the days divided by 365. So I wrote a little formula to calculate our,
You got a new column.
I made a new column to do that, yeah, that's my age. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna demonstrate a couple of things, then I'm gonna send you guys into the lab to do it. So I'm copying the inauguration age, and I'm gonna bring up the new sheets. I'm going to paste special. I don't want the formula that calculated the age, I only wanted the values. So I'm going to say, please paste only the values. So now I just have those standalone numbers. Too many decimal places, so I'm going to whittle those down. To do a histogram, we never know what the best histogram is, so you got to play around a little bit. Play around a little bit, you need to know what's the minimum value in your data. You need to know what's the maximum value in the data. Excel has a command to do that, so I go equals and parentheses, highlight the data. See the minimum age at inauguration, the youngest person was 42.9 years old. Let's find the max. So I know when I make my histogram, I have to start somewhere near 42.9 and I have to go at least up to 70. Another useful statistic would be the range. which is just the max minus the min. So you can say equals this minus that. So I have to span 27 years to do that calculation. Does anyone remember what I said about a good number of columns for histogram? Somewhere between 5 and 20. Okay, so I just kind of play around with that idea. So I'm just going to make a special table to help me think about this. I'm going to make a column here called number of classes. Anybody remember another name for classes in a histogram? Bins. Another one?
Buckets.
Buckets?
Groups.
Groups. Oh my gosh, you guys rock. Best class ever. All right. And then I also want to know what's the bin width or the class width. So here's how I'm going to play around with that. I'm just going to make some things. Like I could have 5 classes, I could do 6, I could do 7, I could do 8, I could do 10, I could do 15, I could do 18. I could do whatever I want. Totally up to me. I'm the creator. If I had 5 classes and I know the data is only 27.1 wide, then I can just do a little division to figure out what the width should be. So if I go equals the range divided by the number of classes I want, and you enter, the computer says, well, if your range is about 27 and you want 5 classes, each class should be 5.4 blah, 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 here's why. Now, if I fill that formula down, it's going to change this B7 to a B8 and a B9. That's all good. But it's also going to want to change the C4 to a C5. How do I tell it to not mess with where the range is? Dollar sign, yes. That's awesome. Dollar sign on the 4. So I rewrote my formula to say $4, which is where the range is. Dollar sign in front of the 4 because I'm copying and pasting it vertically. And then B7 is ready to change. So now I can fill it down. And so this is telling me if you want to make a histogram with 7 classes, then your bin should be about 3.9-ish wide. If you want to have 10 classes, then your bin should be about 2.7 years wide. And so then I can just kind of play around with that idea to try and make a frequency table. So now I'm going to come over here and start playing with bins and frequency. And so let's see. So I need the lowest bin has to be able to contain the minimum, 42.9. So maybe I'll say my lowest bin will end at 43. And so that minimum number will be in there. And then how many classes should we go for, Kelly? 5, 7, 10, 15? What do you want to do today? 10, excellent answer. So let's say we're going to go with 10 bins. So that means we want them to be about 2.7 wide. So then I just go over here and I say, okay, so my next bin max will just be take the previous one and add 2.7 to it.
What's the best width?
It depends on the data. There is no answer to that question. What's the best width? You just kind of have to look and guess. So I'm going to have a bin width of 2.7. So notice my formula. The formula says take the number above and add 2.7. So I can just fill that formula down until I'm past my max of 7. And so, and the computer, it should be about 10 rows before that happens. So that one's extra. So just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now 2.7 is a little less than 2.707, which is why it took me a little more than 10. So now I'm ready to do my frequency command. For the frequency command, after we establish our bins, and these again, these are computer bins. My mother would be a little confused by these. We'll do the human readable bins next. The frequency, you have to highlight a cell next to the bin for each bin plus 1. Starting at the top, that's important. You start at the top, drag down 1 extra. Then I just start typing equals frequency. Hit tab to complete the frequency command. The frequency command sometimes will then tell me, get your data. Okay, my data is way over here. So I go over here, highlight all of my data. Comma, bin says, where are your classes? Okay, so I'm going to scroll back, up, classes, and then close the parentheses. If this were in Excel, does anybody remember the keystroke I would have to do next?
Control.
Control Shift Enter in Excel. In Sheets, you just hit Enter. And it will calculate how many are in each of those groups. What does this group here mean? So for example, this group right here with a max of 48.4, the previous one ended at 45.7. So that means there are 5 things five presidents between the ages of 45.8 up to 48.4. So what I'm starting to type here are human readable bins. And once I draw the picture, you'll see why I'm going to need these later. But I don't know if I like this frequency table yet, because as a human, I need to see a picture of it. So I highlight it, and I ask Google to insert a chart. Out to see it. And Google says, do you want a column chart? And notice it's trying to graph the bins and the frequency. To tell Google not to do that, I have to go to chart type and say the first column are my labels. Okay. So then it puts an axis down here for my first column. Notice it doesn't list all of my first column numbers. You could just not grab them, right, but how does somebody know what that axis means then? We need some kind of numerical pointers to tell us what's in this column, what's in that column, what's in that column. So I need some labels down there so somebody can orient myself. So if I send this to my mom hanging on the fridge, because she and I think it's beautiful, we're going to want to know what it means.
Oh, well, you told it basically, so when you click that box, it automatically applies those as labels?
Yes.
Oh, I see what it meant, okay.
Yeah. So before it was trying to graph the bins here,
Right.
which is inappropriate. The bins are my horizontal labels, so I have to say, please use them as labels. And under customization, I can play with how the horizontal axis looks. So I should probably give it a better title, like President's Inauguration Age. I don't need a legend because it's a single color of data, single set of data. I probably should label that the horizontal axis represents ages. And now it's only showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. That's what the major grid lines mean. I need to show more because I want it to tell me what each of these columns represents. But this is going to be a problem most of the time. 10 isn't enough. I can try putting 11 in there. But notice, each of these numbers represents one of these vertical lines. Do those vertical lines perfectly match up with my columns? They don't. That's because Google's using a slightly different starting number than my columns do. And that is very hard to reconcile in Google's chart wizard here. So after repeated attempts of trying to get the numbers to line up right, I just give up and say, this ain't gonna work for me. I could just, insert it anyway. It's the right picture, it's just the labels on the bottom are misleading. So if I wanted to, so this would be okay for kids to look at, because I can say, oh yeah, they were about 47.6. These guys are about 54.5. I could slant them, yeah. So basically what I need to make this human readable is I need to type all these human readable bins. That this one here is 43.1 up to 45.7. And the one above would be what? I do that math in my head. Minus 2.6. It's going to give me 41.4. I think 243. So that would be 48.5 up to 51.1. Do you see why I didn't start typing this? It's kind of boring watching me type this. It's a pain in the butt to type them. But I need them to make the graph more readable. So I'm just going to graph this subsection of data just to demonstrate what my point is. So now if I graph those, it says, oh, this column is people that were 41.4 to 43. This one is 43.1 up to 45.7. Now if I try cramming a whole bunch of them, these guys are going to get crammed together and it's going to look funny. Then I can do something like, because it's getting too crowded, I can say, please slant those labels by 60 degrees. So then if there's more columns, it'll still be readable to another person. And so that you got to decide when you make a histogram a few things. Does this histogram tell you something interesting about the data? Or do you just want a histogram and you don't really give a shit otherwise? Your first one's great. Usually I have to make a few before I decide I like one. So I would repeat this process again somewhere else over here. So I come over here and I would do bins 2, and I would do frequency 2, or you can call it frequency again. And maybe I decide, you know, that's too many. I only want 7, which means like 3.9 would be a better jump. So maybe I'll start this time at, maybe I'll start exactly at 42.9 for this person, and then I'll jump by 3.9. Up again. So the bottom line is you never know what the best histogram is until you make a few. And so make a few, just needs to get past 70. The frequency, we first highlight columns, then we type equals frequency, highlight the data. So I'll just do one more to another chart, so we just have time to play. Comma, highlight your bins. Just do that over. Close parentheses. In Excel, you would hit Control-Shift-Enter. In Google Sheets, you just hit Enter. And so then I can graph these to see what this histogram looks like. Again, I'm going to adjust it a little bit to see the right histogram. So there's another histogram. The labels are going to be off. Sometimes you can get the labels to work, sometimes you can't. Pretty much I've discovered the only time you can get the labels to work nice is if your bin maximum for all whole numbers. Then everything works great. If there's any decimals involved, forget about it. You got to do human readable bins. That's an extra thing. Does anybody remember the benefit Google Sheets has for histograms that Excel doesn't? So in Excel, to do a histogram, you have to make a frequency table like this or the other one. In Google Sheets, you don't have to. So the first time I showed you a histogram in Sheets, I did it this way. I just highlighted all of the inauguration data. And then I said, Google, could you make a chart out of that? And Google says, sure, would you like a histogram? That's pretty damn easy. The downside of this is it doesn't give you the table. It just gives you a picture of how many things are in each area. And then it gives you boundary numbers, and it's up to you to figure out, is 44 in the first column or the second column? And I can never remember that. And I always have to double check. Because different programs do that in different ways. Now I can easily, now that's a pretty good looking histogram. Did it do a good job? That's the best of the 3 I've made so far. I could go to customization right now, and I could just tell Google to change the bucket size for me. Come on. Catch up. There we go. So I just scroll down to bucket size, and Google's making a bucket size of 4. I could say, well, what would 5 look like? Oh, okay. What would 3.5 look like? Oh, interesting. I can just play around with different bucket sizes. And so it's a quite quicker way to make histograms. The only thing you lose out on here is it's not quite clear whether it uses the lower boundary or the upper boundary. So let's figure that out now. Hopefully we can remember it. I like the first one Google made for me, so I'm just going to get rid of the bucket size and go back to the way it was. I don't really need a legend here. So right at the chart customization option, second one down is legend. I just change right to none. Get rid of that legend right there. I'm just going to stick it in there. And I'm just going to look at my data and just double check here. I'm going to tell Google to sort these guys.
You're doing that in the chart?
No, now I'm outside of the chart. I'm just
You
going to.
already plugged that chart in.
I already hit insert the chart. Yeah, I already hit insert the chart. And so.
So now when you mess around with data outside of the chart, does that chart will automatically update?
Yes, but I'm not changing any values, so it won't change the chart.
Okay.
because Google is just looking at the raw data here, so nothing will change, so I'll be okay. I want to sort this data, so I'm going to go to the data menu and choose sort this range. Yeah. And so here I can see there's so here they have a 44. Nobody's exactly 44, so it's not an issue. I do have somebody that's exactly 48, which is the edge of this column, that column. And so Google is telling me there's, it looks like, must be one person in that column. So 42.9, there should be more than one. There should be two people here. Let's do this. If I right click on that column, I can, let's see, I need all of the columns. There we go. Right click. Let's see. I guess I need to go to advanced edit to double check something. Yeah, you got to be careful on sorting when you select. Let's see what I got omit delimiters. That's what I want to see. They have a bucket called omit delimiters, and sometimes delimiters are nice so we can see how many things are in each column. And Google, in this mode, even tells me what those things are, which is nice. I'm trying to remember how to make it show me that. I'm in advanced edit now. I don't see the option there. Update the chart. So let's see. According to Google, there's only one individual in this one. That doesn't seem right. 42 and 43 should be. I wonder if it's rounding that to 43 and that to 44. Here it says there are 4 up to 48. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 48. 6 including 48. I wonder if I didn't highlight all the data properly. All right, double check. Advanced edit. Chart types. Okay, so I think maybe I didn't select the right data here, so I'm going to reselect some data. Just to double check that's the problem. Oh shit, where did my title go? I'm stuck at the bottom this time. Let's re-highlight pages. Okay. That doesn't change anything. Huh. This chart does not seem right. You see where I'm having trouble with? 42.9, 43.6, up from 40 to 44, it says there's only one thing. That has 2. Yours does have 2. How many does it have in the next one?
2 or 4.
It should in the next one. Is yours the same as mine? It's going up to 48?
Yeah.
So it should be, yeah, it should be 2 and then 4.
Yeah, so mine has 2, 4, 9, 11.
And mine's missing one number. 40 seems to be skipping over 42.9. Hi, Debbie.
Hello.
We're messing around with histogram some more.
Okay.
And I have a glitch in my histogram here. Oh well.
Mouse over the top of the.
I bet if I do this an hour from now, it'll behave perfectly with absolute steps on my part. Mouse over what?
Top of your chart there. Over the bar, yeah.
It's not showing me.
Mine will tell me what's in each one.
Yeah, and for some reason that's not here. But if I go into advanced edit, it will. So I'm not sure what's going on there. So here I can see it and it will tell me which number that is. Oh.
Mine just says items.
Oh, it thinks 42.9 is the title of my data, because notice 42.9 is everywhere.
Yeah, there's something wrong. Mine says items there. Yours.
Use row 1 as header. There it goes. Now it's better. I had the wrong button click there. It was using row 1 as header, and row 1 was my first president, the youngest president. Okay, it was user error, my fault. Okay, now it's displaying the data correctly. So, okay, so the way Google Sheets does it is the number to the right of a column is the last acceptable number in that column. So it's doing it the same way the frequency thing works. Not all programs work that way. So it just depends, you always have to look up your program. All right. Well, that's a relief, it's working. Okay, so let's go over two more charts and then I need to shut up so you guys can do some data planning. So we're still playing around, Debbie, with the president's data. And I
Okay.
reported some stuff in the first part here that you're going to want to look at later about how to work with data in a spreadsheet to do other things with it.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go back to a different set of data. I might as well work with this one. So let's, this sheet's getting messy. Let's bring in a new sheet to play with it. And so I'm going to set up for what's called a box plot. I'm going to use the inauguration age again, yeah. So to make a box plot, you need what's called a 5 spell.
Did you just copy that for a new sheet?
I just copied it into a new sheet, yeah. Or new tab, excuse me, correct. Which is referred to as a sheet. I need what's called a 5-number summary. And this is what activity 5 goes over, finger snapping time. I just asked you guys to do it with this data. Pushes today.
Did you already have multiple tabs on this workbook?
I already did have multiple tabs
I
on
was
this.
like, okay, I remember making those.
Yeah,
All right, gotcha.
I had a few. So the numbers I need to have in here, I need to know what the min is. I need to know quartile 1. I need to know the median. I need to know quartile 3. And I need to know the max. And we did these numbers in class the other day. I'm just going to repeat this again. So I'm just going to recalculate the min here. So I just tell the computer to find the min. If you don't know the name of the command and typing the first couple of letters of a similar word doesn't bring anything else, you can always go to the inserts and then function menu. And then you can choose more, and then you can search for different Google functions. And so if you just type a few keywords here about what you're trying to do, like maybe I want to find a percentile. So I can start typing the word percents, and then it brings up anything that's related. And then I can read about it. I can click learn more. They'll give me a brief tutorial to see if that might be what I want. Keep in mind that these tutorials were written by a computer person with pretty good writing skills, and it was reviewed by a team. And so sometimes you can read that and get it. Other times you read that and you're like, what the hell are they talking about? And so often, if I read their description of it and I still don't quite get it, I just search the internet. Sheets, percentile function, and somebody will have done something I can read, something I can understand about it, and given me examples of it. The internet is so full of great things these days.
Would you click to get that?
Okay, so to get that, if I'm not sure what function to use, I go to Insert, and then Function, and then More. And that brings up Google's function description page, which has every function available in Sheets, but they have a little search box at the top where I can type some keywords about what I'm trying to do. And then the Learn More has usually a pretty good tutorial about what to do with it. All right, so next here I'm going to use the quartile command. And quartile command is kind of a tricky one because there are different quarters in the data. There's 4 quarters. If you have something that's in 4 pieces, that means there's 5 endpoints, beginning and end, and 3 slices in the middle. So there are quartiles exist. There's a 0th quartile, a 1 quartile, a 2 quartile, and so on. I want the first one. First one says, give me the data and tell me which quartile you want. Oops, oh, I forgot to type the quartile. So I need to select the data, then go comma 1 for the first quartile. Median is pretty straightforward. Equals, start typing median, select the data. Quartile 3, just like quartile 1, equals, start typing quartile, select the data. Then
That's kind of the last quartile.
quartile 0 is the minimum. Yeah, yeah, all right. So 0 out of 4 means you're at the bottom of the list. Yep.
Nothing is always in the beginning quartile, you have nothing.
So the first quartile means where are you in the list so that 25% of the data is below you. The 0th quartile means 0 out of 4. So where are you in the list so that none of the data is below you?
Can you never get a negative?
No, because the minimum is the lowest number in the data, right? So if there's no data below you, you must be happy. Similarly, there's a 4th quartile. So where would you be in the data so that 100% of the data is at or below you? Well, that would be the maximum. So, and guess what the second quartile is?
50%.
Yeah, which is the median. So the median and the second quartile are the same thing. So I can use either formula to identify the median. Quartile, data, that's not data. Hang on a second.
One is always 25%. Always 25%.
Because it's 1/4 and 3/4. So yes, that's correct. All right, let's try this one more time. Button pushing trouble today. There we go. Select data. Column 3. Max is pretty easy. Equals max. Select the data. Close your parentheses.
Did you say this back when you just wanted to be I did three.
What's that?
I think your explanation makes more sense to me than when you got this
Before.
the first time.
So once you have the 5-number summary, the min, quartile 1, the median, quartile 3, and the max, what you do is you make a number line that can encompass all of the numbers between your min and your max. So here, my number line would need to roughly go from 40 to 70. Then you mark off that number line neatly, and then you start placing those numbers on the number line. I'm going to copy this into my magic number pad here. Oops, wrong class. There's my new file. Let's go. New screen here. So I'm going to have you guys help me draw this. Computer is a little slow today. Okay, so I'm going to copy that part of the screen. Escape. Sec here. Technical difficulties. There. Either. Okay. 42. That's coming back. Let's try and shake my word. Not really. There. Wait, I have different. It's 69.96. You can round it up or something. Oh, you have more decimal places than I do. I only went to the nearest 10th, you're going to the nearest 100th, so our numbers will look different. Oh, so I can read this that. And remember, when I pasted my numbers in, I told it to only paste to the nearest 10, so I don't even have the data to the nearest 10.
Gotcha.
I got rid of it.
Oh, okay, here.
Wow. Excuse me.
Box plot,
Okay, here we go.
number line.
So to do this box plot, we need to make a number line.
Remember that part.
So I'm going to try to draw my best number line here.
Is this a different set of data than we used on Monday?
Yeah, so this is, on Monday, we were using the lifespan data.
Oh, okay.
It's the same spreadsheet, but we recalculated their age at inauguration.
Okay.
Whoa, my pen is totally flipping out. Come on, seriously? Stop it. Yeah. Okay, so there's my best straight number line. And so here I need to go all the way down to 40-ish and then go up to 70. So let's see, 56. So I can go like maybe this is 10 right here, so that's 50. Maybe about here is where 60 should be. And it's very important you scale your axis before you start putting numbers down. And here is where I'm going to put 70. So I tried to make those as equally spaced as possible. Graph paper is a great idea, ruler is a great idea. And then I start estimating where these numbers live on the number line. So maybe I'll scale just a little bit more. So let's see, 45 is going to be about there, 55, 65. So then my 42.9 is going to be maybe right about here. So there's my min. 51-ish is going to be right about here, say. 54.9 is right snugged up against 55. 58.2-ish is going to be, what, right about here, I would say. And 70 obviously is way over there. So that's the 5-number summary on a number line. To make that into a box plot, what we do is we put little vertical dashes either there or somewhere else. I usually like them nearby. I'm going to put them underneath today. So I'm going to put a little dash directly under each of those marks in a horizontal orientation. The middle 3 get turned into a box. And then I draw whiskers heading out to the outer 2. So this is what's known as a box plot or a box and whisker plots. I always like calling the box and whisker plot. It sounds cute. So does whisker have a WH or is it just WI?
It's WH.
Whisker. So there's my box and whisker plot. If you have a box and whisker plot with no scale, it's useless. You got to do the scale first so you know where each number lives so they are in the right spots number line wise. Super, 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 super important. So last class we did a box plot along with a histogram. That's a nice comparative graph setup. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. What's the name for the distance between the min and the max?
Range.
The range, yes. If I find the distance between quartile 1 and quartile 3, that's known as the interquartile range. Totally Star Trek. Captain, you said interquartile range. So I have to subtract Q3 from Q1. So I'm just going to estimate that. I'm going to abbreviate it. The IQR is approximately, let's see if that was 58.2, then it's 7.2-ish. Probably a little less than that, 7.1. Let's go to 7.1. So what we've just calculated is the width of this box down here. to get from here to there with this data is 7.1. We're going to use the interquartile range to try and identify if anyone was unusually old when they were inaugurated or unusually young. The way you do that is you make the interquartile range 50% bigger. So we want to know what is 150% of the interquartile range. And the stuff I'm going over here is illustrated in activity 5. Right? So we're pretty much doing activity 5. So that means what is, for me, what is 1.5 times 7.1? Anybody have a calculator nearby? I guess I'm going to do this on spreadsheets.
1.5 what?
10.65.
10.65. So my IQR here is equal to quartile 3
15.97.
minus quartile 1. It's about 7.1. So I'm just going to round that. And then I want to know is what is 1.5 times the interquartile range? So Excel is going to give me a few extra decimal points because it's keeping it. So it's 10 point something. What did you say before? It was 10 point.
Wait, no, I said it was
10.65.
10.65. Let's call it 10.7.
that's not right. But
It's not right.
you said 1.5
Times 7.1.
Oh, Kelly said 10.
Oh no, she was doing the calculation. She was a step ahead.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So let's round it. Let's call it 10.7-ish. If we round it. So it's about 10.7. So then what I do with that number is I go to the edge of quartile, I go to quartile 3, and I move out that far. So quartile 3 is roughly 58.2. So I add 10.7 to that. So I'll do that on a spreadsheet just for fun. Remember, spreadsheet is a calculator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create what are called upper and lower boundaries. So my upper boundary is equal to whatever Q3 is, plus 150% of your IQR. So Google says that's about 68.9-ish. And then I do the same thing for the lower. Now for the lower one, I start at Q1 and move to the left. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up boundaries to try and help me figure out if something seems a little too big or a little too small in the data set. So for my lower, I go start at Q1 and go left minus that 50% extra IQR. So it says go down to 40.4-ish if I round to 1 decimal place. Round this down. So the numbers that are important to me at the moment are these upper and lower boundaries. I'll highlight those yellow. So 40.4 roughly and 68.9. So I'm going to make a note of those on my box and whisker plot. So let's pick a new color, some pen, let's switch back to blue maybe. So 40.4 is way back here. I'm going to put a little asterisk there. And what was the other one? 68.9? Is that something right? 68.9. 68.9 would be just inside my max. So how did I just, again, how did I calculate those? Right. My lower number came from taking Q1 and going back 1.5 times the IQR. That number was about 40.3. My upper number came from taking Q3 and going right 150% of the IQR. So what we're doing is we're taking the middle group of our data and we're saying, let's expand out from that to the right and left a little bit. Are there any data numbers that are outside of that region? Good. So what that tells me, this is one measure to determine if something is unusually large or unusually small compared to the other numbers. So this person that was 70 years old when they were inaugurated was unusually old compared to his colleagues.
What's the key? Is that a Q2 or a Q3?
That is a Q3 right here. 68.9 is this number. So my maximum of 70, we would say that's an outlier based on this rule. And every data set is different. Some data sets, everything appears to be normal according to this extended IQR rule. Right? So again, what we're doing here is we're extending the interquartile range to look for outliers.
Which president would,
We'll have to look back at the table. I'm trying to think of old presidents we've had. She's too better about things like that. Extended interquartile range. I can't remember. As soon as I hear the name, let's take a look back at the data.
So the one that's completely off of the box and whisker, that one's fine?
Okay, so let's get back to the picture. So this asterisk way over here,
Yes.
yeah, so that's not even a number in my data set. Again, I found that by finding the width of this box and then making that box a little bit wider and looking out to the left of that far. And
Okay.
the red line here is my minimum. And so what this tells me is my lowest, my youngest president is not too young compared to his colleagues.
Okay.
Oldest president is a bit old compared to the others. Because what percent, check this out, what percent of the presidents live in this box? Well, if this is Q1, the first quartile, and this is Q3, the third quartile, doesn't it mean that 50% of the presidents were in that age range?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's 50% live in each section. 50% of the presidents are here, 50% here, 50% there, 50% there. No, sorry, 25. Shoot. Whoa. 25% are in each of those quarters. So 50% of my presidents live within that box. And so what we do is we say, okay, let's take the middle 50. Let's look at their range and just expand it out a little bit. If anyone's outside of that expanded range, we think they're unusual compared to the rest of the crew. So, for example, anybody here a sports fanatic of any kind? Greg? No, darn it. Anybody know of like a sports player that gets paid a lot of money?
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson? Who's he?
Quarterback for the
Quarterback for the Seahawks, okay. So he probably makes a lot of money each year. Probably more money than anyone else on his team, by far.
Sure.
So if we plotted all the amount of money each Seahawk player makes each year, we would find Russell Wilson is way out here somewhere. Everybody else lives somewhere in this region. Not all data has outliers. Some data is nice, tightly packed, spread out evenly, and there's nothing that's unusual. But every once in a while, something weird pops up in the data. Sometimes weirdness is natural. Sometimes it's a mistake. Who knows? But we flag it and say, this number is unusual.
87.6 million.
87.6 million. Oh my
On his new
goodness.
contract.
I can't even comprehend that much money. Kelly?
so it's not why they use test scores?
Quartiles for test scores?
Like when they make it into a problem because they have to solve?
Oh, why do they come up on tests?
No, I mean, like,
Or
why do they use, like, that's why they use,
why do we use quartiles and percentiles when we're talking about test scores? So we can compare people to each other. So,
That's Reagan, by the way.
oh, Reagan was the oldest one?
Yes,
Okay.
69.9.
Oh my, okay. So
I didn't want to
Reagan-
wake up in the middle of the night and go.
Okay, so Reagan was our outlier in terms of age.
69.9.
I was wondering, like Kennedy's always touted as such a young president, I was wondering if he would be considered an outlier. but according to this measure, he wouldn't. There are other statistical ways to identify things that are unusually low or unusually high. This is just one of them. Next class, I'll go over a different way. But this is just one way. And this is what Activity 5 was all about, this process of creating a box plot. And I talk too much because there's not much time for you guys to play now. Darn it. One more thing I want to do. So we have two options. You guys could watch me make a, what do you call it, scatter plot, or you go to the computer lab and play around a little bit. Danielle, Kelly.
I've been playing as you go.
You've been playing as you go, I know.
It doesn't matter to me
Yeah,
whatever
so
you want to do.
Greg and Debbie joined us part way, and it's on a computer. Just staying here? Okay. So I'll demonstrate a scatter plot, and then we'll just end class a few minutes early, because the scatter plot's actually pretty easy to do. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna zoom out a little so I can see what I'm doing here. And my sheets got all messed up, so let me see if I can clean them up a touch. Okay, so sheet 1, sheet 3, sheet 2. Ah, there we go. Okay, sheet 2 is where I had all my data. So what I want to do is I want to compare. So in class, we were comparing lifespan in years. Debbie, earlier in the class in the recording, I showed how to take, remember in the original spreadsheet I shared with you, there were some hidden columns.
Mm-hmm.
I unhid those columns, and what was hiding in there was the age of inauguration in years and days.
Oh, okay.
I showed how to split the years and days out and compute a decimal value for their inauguration age. I did that to make it go along with the lifespan. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to compare the age they were inaugurated at to the age they died at. And I'm going to do that for the scatter plot. Since this data isn't next to each other, the way to do that is to highlight your first set of data with the mouse. Then let go of the mouse. Hold the control key, and then highlight your next unconnected set of data. So the control key allows you to select disconnected things. So I've highlighted the inauguration age, and I've highlighted the lifespan in years. Oh, by the way, Debbie, I put a link to this file in our course website under the activities announcements.
Okay.
So I'm currently editing the U.S. President's file linked here.
Are you sure it's control? I think it's shift.
It's control. If you do shift, so check this out. So if I click that cell and then I hold shift and I click this cell over here, it'll try to select everything in between. Control allows you to select disconnected things. Shift forces things to be connected. So that was a shift click on my second click.
Is control kind of like freezing the screen?
No, it doesn't really freeze the screen. It just allows you to select things that aren't touching each other. So I let go of the mouse, I hold control, and then I grab my mouse again, and then I reselect stuff.
Okay, so we got those two columns.
So I got those two columns. Then I say, Google, let's make a chart. And I'm going to go over to chart types because it's not displaying the kind of chart I want. And I want to find the scatter plot. There it is. And I do have headers, which were inauguration age and lifespan. And it gave me a cute title. So, oh, histogram. I'm saying histogram. So I'm going to go to customization and change that title. So what I'm graphing here is inauguration age versus lifespan. Inauguration age versus lifespan. I really don't need a legend here for lifespan because the vertical axis is the lifespan here. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to ditch the legend. And I'm going to scroll down. And here it says axis horizontal. I'm going to change that to axis left vertical. So then I can give a title to the vertical axis here. So again, to get that, Danielle, when I scroll down and it said axis horizontal, and I can see the horizontal settings. Now I want to switch to the vertical axis settings. And I'm going to give it a title of lifespan. Now I'm hoping it's obvious to my users that inauguration age is measured in years and lifespan is measured in years. Sometimes you have to type something like in years so people get what you're talking about. Sometimes it's obvious. You have to use your best judgment as to what your readers will get out of your graph, how specific you need to be.
Lifespan is one word, right?
Lifespan is usually one word, you're correct, yeah. I can play around with other features. I'm not going to today. I'm just going to go with this.
And then what do you have for the horizontal?
For the horizontal, it already grabbed the inauguration age for that one. Yours didn't? Okay. So you,
Years.
okay. Yeah, so you must have selected slightly different way than I did. So now I just want to make sense of this table. This whole thing is looking kind of messy to me, which is bugging me. One thing I can do with charts in the edit button in the upper right, I can say move you to your own sheet, which will kind of clean things up for me, but it'll give me a new tab at the bottom. But now I have this nice big graph, which is pretty cool. So let's see, is there a pattern or is this wild and all over the place? Or a combination?
Same thing.
It's a pattern. So it looks like the older somebody was at inauguration, the longer they lived in general. Right? Isn't there kind of like an uphill slope to this? Yeah. And so there's a couple things we say about that. A lot of people say there is a positive correlation to this data. Right? Now, correlation just means as one number increases, the other number seems to increase. That doesn't imply causation. Because somebody was inaugurated later in life, they get to live longer. Right? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe it does. Maybe it does something to their body that makes them live longer. Maybe presidents eat better than everybody else. I don't know. I think the stress of being president would be a detriment there.
Plus the one that got assassinated.
And then there were some that got assassinated, right? And they could be some of these, I don't know where they are in here. I think there are ways to have Google, like if they had more data, I could point to one of these maybe and it would tell me who it was. I have to research that. I know there's some software that will do that, which is pretty cool. Our textbook uses a different terminology, and I forgot what it was. It's they don't use the word correlation. What do they use? Oh, darn, I looked it up. Okay, so we have the ebook. Let's see, there's chapter contents. Whatever we do. So I think this is in section 10.3, if I remember right. Some data there's no correlation. They're just scattered and all over the place, and we can't say there's one is related to the other. That's what I'm kind of talking about here. So that's called a line of best fit.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it's called linear regression, depending on how you create the line. I think it's in displaying data part 2.
The positive association.
Association. Thank you, Debbie. I don't know why that word wouldn't come to me. Yeah. So in this data, since there seems to be an uphill trend, we say there's a positive correlation or a positive association. There's a mathematical way to put a number to that, between 0 and 1 for a positive association, between 0 and -1 for a negative association. Negative association means the data is clumped but downhill. So if I graph some data and it looked, actually it gives me nice big dots now. So if I graph some data and the data kind of went down like this, I would say there is a negative association or a negative correlation to that. We could try and draw a line to it. So, maybe I say this line goes through the data, and maybe that line has the equation y equals negative 1.05x plus 7. Just making some stuff up. That there's a negative slope is related to the idea that there is a negative correlation here. The book calls it a negative association. But the slope is not the value of the negative correlation or association. That's a whole nother idea. So it turns out we can give correlation a value. It is not the same thing as slope. They will have the same sign. If the slope is negative, the correlation is negative. If the slope is positive, the correlation is positive. Association does not have statistical meaning. Correlation does. Okay, correlation is a number between positive 1 and negative 1. It can be measured on a data set. We're not covering that in this class. I teach a class that all we do is statistics, and we still don't get to this idea in the class. It's usually in the second course in statistics you get to that. But it is an interesting idea. It is out there, and it's used a lot in research. All right, so I think that's enough for today. I, again, overestimated what I thought we could do today. I had intended for you guys to go to the lab and practice some of this. I had also intended to cover measures of spread today. Which we talked about a little bit, and so I'll have to do that on, let's see, today is Wednesday already, oh my gosh. So next Monday I'll have to talk about this. We talked about range, that's a measure of spread. We talked about the interquartile range, that's a measure of spread. What we didn't get to talk about is deviation and standard deviation. And so I'll work on those with you next class. And that's section 10.4. All of this is section 10.4. So we've gone through most of the material up through 10.3. We've covered, I'd say, half of 10.4. So we have to finish the other half of 10.4, which is about this stuff right here. So this up here is the first half of 10.4. And then, let's see. Then there's some stuff about misuses of statistics that we'll go over. So next week we'll finish up the chapter on statistics, and the week after we'll move on to geometry. Okay. I mentioned before there's this really awesome book I like on statistics. Really only the first chapter is relevant to us, but there's a lot of other cool stuff. It's called The Cartoon Guide to Statistics. I printed copies for those of you here. Debbie, I'm going to scan a copy of that first chapter and send it to you.
Okay.
And it's, I'm using it for educational purposes, so I can do that, but you don't have the right to copy it and disseminate it, because otherwise you and I will get in trouble.
Okay.
And if you like it, it's a pretty cool book. It's only like $9 or $10 at most bookstores. And it goes into everything I teach in a first course in statistics and more. It covers everything most schools do in 2 quarters of statistics. And it does it in a really cool way. It's a really nice book. So that's it for today. I will email you that soon, Debbie. Read through activity 5, which goes through the box whisker plot, extended interquartile range idea that we did today. And then next week we'll tie up all the statistics stuff so we can move on to geometry.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, have a good sunny day, and I'll catch you next week.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.